If you're always available, then people will just assume that your time has no value. Generally, the man who talks the least learns the most. Good men don't lose in life because they're immoral. Most of the time, they'll lose because they just don't know the game that is being played around them. Every man who's ever been divorced, betrayed in a business, or disrespected at home has violated one or more of these laws of power. Her presence was the gift. Like, just by being there, that was the equivalent exchange. When evil is being done, good men stay silent. And so neither of those extremes are reasonable ways for us to go ahead and conduct ourselves in the world. Crush your enemy totally. Do not give them a chance to stab you in the back. Power is a tool that can be wielded by those that are righteous and those that are unholy. Today, we are doing part 4 of the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And so we're going to go through laws 13 through 16. Now, just a quick reminder for everybody at home. Power is not inherently evil. Power is a tool that can be wielded by those that are righteous and those that are unholy. And it's just a matter of how you decide to use these rules and these laws to implement them in your own life. And power exists whether you acknowledge it or not. Whether you decide to wield it or not, somebody's going to wield it against you or for you, whether you consent to it. Now, good men don't lose in life because they're immoral. Most of the time, they'll lose because they just don't know the game that is being played around them.
Don't know or don't care.
Well, sure. It's just one of those things where some people have this dogged belief that power is just for evil people, and that if you wield power, that by some means, that's going to go ahead and cause problems. And it's, I don't know, there have been several great men of old that have wielded power for the benefit of many. And there's a lot of great things that have happened in our society and in societies past when good men took upon the roles and the responsibilities associated with power to get great things to happen.
Yeah. It's just funny because we're going to talk about passivity, so.
Sure. Now, the 4 laws we're going to be talking about today have to do with dependence, maintaining an image, having proper timing, and the idea of scarcity in terms of how you spend your presence and how you show up to other people. So every man who's ever been divorced, betrayed in a business, or disrespected at home has violated one or more of these laws of power, and we're going to just get into it. Do you have any opening thoughts before we dig right in? No? Okay. Here we go. Law number 13. It says, when asking for help, appeal to self-interest, never to mercy or gratitude. So the general idea is when you want to ask for something, it is usually a good idea to frame it in such a way that it's mutually beneficial for it to be a win-win situation. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah. Help me, help you, help me.
Sure. So like when you're asking somebody to do something for you, like a contractor to help build a house, well, there's a contract associated with that. I'm going ahead and providing you money in exchange for the goods and services that you provide for me. That is a win-win situation for both parties. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen in the first place.
Yeah. Contracts are for things go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
That way, there's no
ambiguity of what's going on.
There's no hurt feelings or anything. It's like we default to the contract. We both signed it.
Sure. And that assumes that both people know the terms and conditions and understand, hey, gentlemen that are operating at a certain level will go ahead and get legal counsel to go ahead and oversee contracts on their behalf if they're smart at a certain level. Yeah. But the fundamental idea is that gratitude and feelings and mercy, all of these things are not stable foundations upon which to make requests of other people, right? Just because somebody's done something for you in the past, yes, generally the law of reciprocation is, hey, if I'm doing for you, I expect that at some point you would go ahead and do something for me. That doesn't necessarily mean you get to dictate the timing of it, right? So when I think of this, I often think of like mob bosses and how they'll go ahead and do some underhanded thing, and then they'll be like, you owe me a favor at a time of my choosing. And then when they go ahead and bring up the favor, there is the threat of violence that is present if you don't comply at the time.
Again, that's another different dynamics, the power dynamics at play within that relationship, in the
Sure.
context of that relationship.
Right. And then that has a lot to do with determining or having discernment about who you're doing business with. If you know this person has ill motives or ill intent or has a bad reputation, you are opening yourself up to vulnerabilities. Take that into your own consideration. And sometimes that risk is worth it, and sometimes it's not. It's not my role to play to go ahead and tell another man how they should be making decisions when it's their own life that they should be concerned with. Like, I can go ahead and give them morals and principles and things of that nature, but I can't be that guy that's, you must make this decision or else. That's not my place, right? So that's interesting because it reminds me of something that was going on with another person where there was an issue with a pastor and they had some public sin going on, and some commenter was like, yeah, they should be immediately removed and never be in a role of leadership ever again. And I'm like, well, I'm not their eldership, so I don't have all the facts associated with this. But generally speaking, here are the principles at play. It could be a fireable offense depending on the severity. It could be something that you sideline them for a little bit while you give them time to repent and restore them to a good status. But this person was like, no, they're done. Gone. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. And that eldership is afoul of God's standard. And I'm like, whoa, you are speaking well outside of your authority to go ahead and say that, because neither of us in this conversation has the details that they did for the decision that they made. And I can't go ahead and sit here on Monday morning judging the actions that happened on Sunday during the game.
And honestly, if it was you in that position, wouldn't you want somebody to extend you grace?
Well, I think it's one of those things where they come from the perspective that they're perfect, so they don't need grace, so they shouldn't go ahead and give grace to other people. And it's that's not really a good foundation to be on, because no man has met the standard but one, and that's it. And I sure as heck am not that guy. So I know that I'm in need of grace from time to time, so I am not going to go ahead and be that guy. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some circumstances that are do not pass go, do not collect $200, but I wasn't in the room to go ahead and analyze that situation, and they have a plurality of elders that goes ahead and takes a look at that they were rightfully appointed to their positions and they were ordained to their positions. That's not my business to judge their decisions, because I was not part of the ordinating body to go ahead and make that happen. So it's just weird how sometimes people will go ahead and get locked in on things.
So black and white.
Sure. And it's not like, some things don't require nuance, but a lot of things in life do. And when people fail to recognize that there are a range of ways to deal with a certain problem rather than looking at just one problem, it's as if the only tool you have is a hammer. And when the only tool you have is a hammer, pretty much every problem looks like a nail, when there is several ways to go ahead and handle things correctly. And there's a range of acceptable options there. But some people don't see life that way. And I think that's a really limiting belief set to have. Now, here's some areas where good guys get burned with the application of this law. A lot of times people will go ahead and be in a business and they'll build a partnership with a friend and they'll just be like, oh, we're friends, things will be all right. Like, certainly because we're friends, we don't have to have a contract. We don't have to have a partnership agreement. We don't have to do any of that. We just need to go ahead and bro out and do the thing, right? That's clearly the best way to run a business.
That's always the way that pans out. Just everybody's going to sing Kumbaya till the end of their days.
Well, sure, at least until somebody goes ahead and gets sideways with the other guy and then empties the bank account and runs away. Well, if you guys are both sole proprietors and there's no like formal business arrangement made, yeah, you can go after him, but it's going to be a lot harder to justify because he has every right to that money as you do. It's kind of like getting married and not understanding what the default provisions are in your state, right? Understanding where the rules are is a key component to having a good, stable society, partnership, marriage, any number of things. Now, another thing that often burns good guys is the idea of helping family without any clear boundaries. Like, generally speaking, it is a good thing to help your kinfolk and to help your brothers and sisters in any way that you reasonably can. But at some point, it gets really nuts, and it could be like a situation where you're like enabling somebody. And that draws a lot of things into conflict, right? And I think that oftentimes we get blinded by general precepts and fail to recognize the severity of the situation. Though when we look at the world as a whole, it is useful to look in terms of generalities to make good general decisions about how you operate in the world, and not necessarily taking a look at each specific circumstance, because exceptions don't disprove the rule. Now, the opposite of doing this whole like appealing to self-interest is kind of like simping, or you go ahead and just do things that are rendering you as a parasite to somebody else. So either you are giving away the farm and not expecting any reciprocity until you get offended by it, or you expect everything of somebody else, and then when they ask you for reciprocity, you end up being like a horrible person about it. And you're like, oh, well, I thought you were just giving me these things. Why do I need to give you anything in return? It's a gift, right? No, not exactly. If we're asking for help and there's an idea of exchange and it's not happening, well, maybe something should happen. Have you ever seen that in a relationship before?
A chick expects men to pick up the check, like pay for this and that and the other trip and all of that stuff. It's that age-old question, what do you bring to the table?
Right.
I am the table.
Okay. That's a really good example of how this works.
Like, honestly, this is how women ask for things without really asking.
Ooh. Okay. Go into that a little bit. There's some juice there.
They feel like they're this princess to be adored, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to, okay, now I need you to come alongside and we're going in this direction. And then she's, wait, no, I don't want to do that. And then go off on this kind of giving this I don't need no man energy. It's like that lady who starts the recording like when she wants to start it and going, I don't know what you're talking about. It's, bitch, I gave you all this stuff beforehand and now I'm just asking you to kind of follow my lead here because this is the direction we've been going in, and now you don't want to.
That's pretty fun.
And then you're this strong, independent woman. I don't need no man. And wait a minute, what was all that other stuff? Wait, I want you to take me here. I want you to buy me this. And really, it's like craziness. That's legit extortion.
What's really funny is that reminds me of some video that Hobath did where he was talking about that very thing, where women were talking about how they deserve everything. And the question is, on what basis do you deserve the thing? What do you mean, what basis? I just am. And that goes back to the whole, what are you bringing to the table? Mm-hmm. You go, I am the table. And it's just, there is no mutual exchange. And so in that way, a lot of times women in our society act like parasites. They don't bring anything to the table. And it was really funny. I was listening to some dating talk show the other day, and this older woman, she was like 47, and she works in the oil field supporting other oil field guys. And she was dating this guy, and I have this 90-day rule for intimacy. And it's, okay, that's interesting.
Okay.
And one of the other participants was like, okay, well, if you have that 90-day rule, what is it that you are bringing to the interaction that makes sense? Because there's an exchange of value that is being had. Makes it worth the wait, right? And she's, what do you mean? And he's, well, okay, so you just said that he took you on a fancy date. He took you to the Dallas Stockyards, and it was like $1,500, and he wined and dined you, and you're like, I have this 90-day rule. We're not crossing any lines. Okay, cool. Have that conviction. But what is it that you contribute to the effort to make it worth him pursuing you? She didn't have a good answer for it. She's like, just
never been asked that, kind of does not compute.
Well, it didn't compute because from her perspective, her presence was the gift. Like, just by being there, that was the equivalent exchange.
And honestly, I think, especially in this dating culture, mm-hmm. like, you said 90 days. So, like, day 91, he's going to be like,
let's go.
it's time to pay up.
But like, in reality, like if we go ahead and take a look at this, the 90-day rule is like a buffer. It's just a way of her saying, I'm not a slut.
Yeah.
When we're going ahead and putting it down. And the thing is, she sets the rules for guys that she's not that attracted to, if it's not a genuinely held conviction. And even if it's a genuinely held conviction, I don't know on what basis that can be like a held conviction. Like either the standard is no sex before marriage or it's not, right? It's like there's a moral piece to that, and you can go ahead and justify it from different systems of morality for why that could be the case. But then when you have this arbitrary period of time, there's no foundation to that other than your personal desire. And what you're saying is, this is the level at which I hold myself, and if you don't respect it, you don't respect me. But on the flip side, if she is really about the guy, she's going to throw that rule away. Because it won't matter, because she will realize that this guy is so valuable that she cannot risk losing him. And so she will put away her rules to go ahead and pursue her best option.
How many times have you seen that? Oh, I don't know what's happening. I'm not really like this. Like after they already did the thing.
After they did the thing, they're like, oh, I've never done this before. Sure you haven't.
It's really funny because my intrusive thoughts are being intrusive.
Cool, go for it.
And there's the recreational use only rent by the hour motel.
Right.
There's Airbnb where it's a couple of weeks, all right, and then we just go be about it, right? This chick is classifying herself as extended stay, the monthly rate.
I guess, but like that would be the case if you didn't have nowhere to stay during that extended stay for a period of time.
That's what she's doing.
Sure, she's holding up a price.
Because it costs way too much, and you might as well get a short-term lease at that point.
Well, right. And the thing is, like, she's 47. She's not going to provide him a legacy.
No.
She's not going to go ahead and provide him 50 years of marriage. What is it that she's actually providing for this high price that she's asking? And I don't see it as a problem for the guy to go ahead and look at his options and say, does this make sense for me? Because as a society, we are often too concerned with what the women think about the thing without concerned about what the man is bringing, what he expects, and what the exchange should be.
That's funny because that is the biggest thing, especially with women, that you run into. They're like, why are you talking about it like it's a transaction? That's not romantic. There's no feelings in it. Yeah, so that you don't control the narrative.
Yes.
We need to look at this objectively. When you're trying to negotiate an arrangement with another human being, like the feelings are involved in them picking you.
Right.
The rest of it should not be fraught with any feelings. You extricate the feelings to the actual choosing of the person. Mm-hmm. It's like, we could do this. This is kind of stage 2. We've done the feelings. Okay, cool. Let's look at this as a sort of essentially a checks and balances kind of thing.
Well,
Let's
sure.
balance the checkbook here.
Well, and there's different stages to a relationship, right? There's attraction, negotiation, and maintenance.
Yeah.
The things that make sense in the attraction phase of a relationship are very different from the things that make sense in the maintenance phase when we're looking for a long-term committed relationship.
Honestly, what we're talking about with all of this is essentially extortion.
Okay.
It reminds me of our oldest. She like cringes now when I tell people this story, that we were at a park day and she was going around. She found this little boy where I think he had like a scooter or something, and she didn't bring hers that day. I don't even remember. It's been so long. She was like, it was candy. Yeah. Essentially, she was asking him for some of the candy, and she had nothing to barter with.
Right.
So she just got in his face and said, can I have some of your candy? Say yes. It was just like, so all the time we were talking about please no, that was, you say yes.
Sure. And the thing is, that's kind of like the idea of using an emotional appeal rather than having there be some kind of clear exchange. And I find that this often happens in dating and relationships where, as a woman, they're trying to go ahead and use the idea of feelings as their form of contribution, right?
Also, as their form of currency.
Sure. And so, like, when you say something and it, like, ticks them off, it doesn't matter what you said. It's just how they feel about what you said.
Yeah.
Is the thing that goes ahead and sets them on a wild goose chase.
And that's where the shame comes in.
Sure. And it doesn't matter whether you said something was factually accurate or completely true.
No matter.
No matter. It's just once they're offended, they're just like, their brain shuts off and they're just in attack mode at that point. But in the case of asking for stuff, it's you put on a sweet mask, ask for the thing, and then there's no cost to you really to ask for something.
Sure.
It's just like in the game of please no. There's no harm in asking for something if you are the wanter. The cost is on the giver, right? It is the person that is giving the thing that is being asked of that bears the cost in that exchange. So unless you're putting something of equivalent value up, it's easy for those wires to get crossed.
When the person is asking and the person is evaluating whether or not to give said thing, whatever it is, to the wanter, if the answer is no, there's really no harm, no foul. It was just like an ask, a no, okay. But if you're going to make a second pass, that's where you're kind of doubling down on that.
Sure.
And especially I think for women, like the shame of being like refused twice. And so they almost take the shame that they feel and heap it on the other person.
Yeah, as if the other person is under some kind of like obligation to provide the woman that thing.
Yeah. So
And it's like there's no obligation
there. The entitlement there is just, woof.
I think another thing that this applies to in a lot of ways is marriage and relationships, and how when there is no clear delineation of exchange over time, guys will poorly default to some kind of appeal to pity to get the things that they want, rather than operating from a frame that inspires desire in the woman, which are very different things. And so by defaulting to something like an appeal to pity, that's a one-way ticket to a dead bedroom, like 6 or more months down the road.
I think that's the best thing about the dynamics of like our relationship,
Okay, what do you got?
where we don't have this, the default is not no.
The default is yes.
The default is yes. And all I've got to say is we talk about a lot that like, even so, I'll just be like, yeah, okay. Because either way, we're going to have a good time. Everybody's going to have a good time. It's going to be great. But there are some times where I'm just like, yeah, I just want to let you know this is where I'm at. I'm just like pretty tired and back hurts. Like when we got back from traveling and stuff, like that rental car was weird. I was like, oh.
And so what I think is really funny about that, not that your back is hurt and all this other stuff, but when you say that, I go ahead and put on like the Dr. Love outfit. And I'm like, I've got the prescription for you. I go ahead and take a look at all the symptoms that you provide to me. And I'm like, I can work with that.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, this is where I'm at. These are kind of the things that are concerning me.
Sure.
But I just kind of give them over to you and be like, can you work with this?
Yeah.
And that answer is always yes.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
So it's like you get rid of all, it's like an infomercial where they get rid of all of those basic salesmanship strategies, where they kind of get rid of all the obstacles
and objections
and no's and objections and stuff to pave the way for
a yes.
An easy yes.
Now, the trick to this is by preceding all of this with a series of yeses, right? Where if you are consistently doing your job as a dude and you know how to work the plumbing, it makes it so much easier for her to say yes. Because you can go ahead and, as a master plumber, know exactly where to go ahead and turn that wrench or reroute the pipes whenever you need to. And so I think that's part of having a really good dynamic that you build up in a relationship, is that having that mastery is something you practice at over time if you're being intentional about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that too few couples actually work at. It's just like anything else in life or in relationships. In order to get the best out of it, you need to put some work into it.
It took work to get to that place. But
Sure.
once you get used to it, it's like a nice like default setting to have, honestly.
Yeah.
Rather than having to sit there and do the dance of, play acting at, I have a headache and oh my gosh, it's been terrible. And like you have to go through this, woe is me, like monologue.
And it's so performative in nature, right? Like you have to go and assert that your needs are more important than his to start. So it's like when he comes home from work and then she goes, oh, well, let me tell you what was going on at this house while you were over at your job.
Love feeling well.
Right? And so you start with this level of audacity, and then it makes it really easy to be like, okay, cool, well, I'm just going to go to bed. And he's just, okay, well, what about dinner? And she's like, I don't care, I'm going to bed.
And dinner, too.
Yeah,
Wow.
the whole nine,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're going to go ahead and commit to the bit, and you're going to go ahead and be that kind of taker in the relationship, like, what's your left and right boundary? If you're the kind of guy that just accepts that behavior from her without any kind of consequence, then of course you're going to go ahead and get that as a regular occurring theme in your relationship.
That's really sad. All around.
Sure. And then if you go ahead and look at like kind of the flip side of the whole appealing to pity, then you've got the appeal to guilt. This is where like, after all I've done for you, this is the least you can do for me. And like that right there is not going to inspire the best from her, right? Because then she's going to go ahead and just take it as like she owes you. Like we go ahead and casually call it the marital debt because that's what it says in scripture. That's what it is. That's owed to both parties in 1 Corinthians. That's just what's said. But that's not how we go ahead and live it out day to day, right? It's not a matter of manipulation, right? Because that's not the way to have a good, fulfilling relationship in a marriage or any time, really.
Just like being a doormat is not the way to live out submission.
Right. And there's adjustments to be made about these things, right?
Like, especially like a lot of women, like from my generation, this was our childhood. I do all this for you. The least you could do is this. I did all these nice things for you. The least you could do.
And it's a form of extortion in a lot of ways too, is, hey, I've done these things. I've set up the circumstances where now I have a demand of you. And if you fail to live up to this demand, I'm going to go and exact punishment, like right now. And that's just not a healthy way to lead a relationship, which is why building up on a foundation of mutual benefit is usually the best play for the extended life of relationships, generally speaking.
That's how to plan for the long haul. And honestly, I'm gonna be like, women, if you had this kind of manipulation and unhealthy relationships, especially in your family of origin, and you are sitting there and turning shame on somebody else, especially somebody you purport to love, stop. Get some help. Honestly, like if this was your childhood and you are doing what we're saying and doing the whole like shaming and blah blah blah, come on now.
Well,
You
and
might
not,
want to take a look at that.
and not only that, but if that is in your past and you ascribe incorrectly the intentions of your husband and try to say that the things that he is doing is manipulative to you, if they're not, that's some problem to go ahead and take a look at too, because you're just trying to go ahead and take your past traumas and dump them on him as if it's his fault that you've done the thing.
It's continuing generational trauma.
Right? And so unless you go ahead and deal with that, then you're going to have these problems go into several generations beyond.
Yeah. Especially if you're going to put your spouse in that position where they either have to maneuver with shaming you or guilting you with a guilt trip or simping.
Right. Neither
Guilt-bait.
path is a good thing to build a relationship on.
It's terrible.
So it's just one of those things where I think that a lot of times women in our culture are taught to go ahead and expect both sides of that coin and not to go ahead and have a reasonable understanding of the underlying expectations of both sides of the relationship. And a lot of times people don't actually talk about this stuff before they like get together for an extended period of time. It's just, we're going to go ahead and have a relationship by default. And when we have a problem, we have a problem, as opposed to actually leading the relationship as a guy and saying, hey, look, this is what I see. Does this jive for you? And if not, we can go ahead and end things now. Not a big deal. Or if those things make sense to you, or it's going to take some time for you to go ahead and get on my program, by all means, let's go ahead and figure that out together. But if it's something that does not make sense and is like an affront to the way that you see life, then we may as well save each other the time and not continue further.
Especially if, God forbid, little eyeballs are looking at this is how you deal with issues in a relationship.
Well, hopefully you go ahead and handle this stuff before little ones show up.
But how often does that happen?
Well, and then in this day and age, you got a lot of women that are carrying around kids before they're getting involved with another guy, and they have all these preconceived notions of what life should look like out of this survival instinct that they've cultivated as a single mom. And you and I both know that survival is like the number one priority for women, whereas the number one priority for men is something a little bit different than that. We're not so afraid of our environment that we have existential dread, right? A lot of times men die like due to the idea of having lack of purpose and meaning and stuff like that, where they're living, but they're dead inside, which is very different. So bottom line is, in your relationship, don't guilt trip people. And if you feel like you are having to resort to begging, there are other problems that you need to address first.
Don't be that guy.
Do not be that guy. It's not good for you either way. And so if...
This is not a good way to live in general.
Yeah, no way to maintain a relationship. And it's certainly no way to establish a relationship. If you're having problems during the establishment phase of a relationship while you're negotiating things out, what makes you think that things are going to be better during the long term? Like when there's not the hot and heavy feelings going on where, oh, we're just trying to get in each other's pants because emotions and hormones and all this stuff, right? Because, hey, people have this deep-seated desire to put tab A into slot B, and that's just what it is. And sometimes that clouds people's judgment rather than taking a look at, hey, what is the long-term responsibility we should be having in this to establish a safe environment for that to happen on the regular basis?
And chances are, if you're dealing in your personal relationships like this, it's going to spill over into other areas of life.
Oh, yeah, because it's a matter of character, right? Because your character precedes you in every interaction that you have. If you have these character flaws that come about in your day-to-day life, you shouldn't be surprised that they show up in your relationship with your spouse.
You're just going to have that Post-it note on your back that says, kick me.
Let's see. So aside from the idea of like never begging, never going ahead and using guilt, I think the best thing that both men and women can do is when they go ahead and make a request of their significant other is to go ahead and frame it as mutual benefit for the most part, right? And obviously not every little thing can be that way, but if your general practice is to seek the benefit of the other,
That's a healthy thing.
that's a healthy thing that we can both get on board with. And I will have benefit of the doubt for you, and you'll have benefit of the doubt for me when I'm making a request that there's something to it.
Yeah. Because otherwise, if you're looking at the tension between the two, like either to pity or whatever, it's all manipulation.
Sure.
It is all manipulation. So you're going to even what's supposed to be your safest, most solid relationship in life, you're going to sit there and go, what's your angle? And be trying to play mental chess when you shouldn't be.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to be.
You should be back to back y'all against the world because the world is unforgiving. It doesn't give a crap about you.
Right.
But you guys purport to give a crap about each other. So maybe you want to stop viewing each other as the enemy and viewing each other as your ally.
Yeah. And then once you can go ahead and have a healthy dynamic like that, then you can go ahead and seek a community with other like-minded people that have that healthy dynamic going on. And then all of a sudden, everybody else in the community is made better because of that. And for the longest time, we had basic rules that we lived by as a society that had us have stronger, healthier families. And we have since lost that over the last 60 or so years.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it is incredibly important to reassert those rules for society and to live it on a personal basis so that you can extend your influence to the community around you. And that's one of the many reasons why I like despise feminism, especially feminism in the church, because it's like an infectious disease that goes ahead and ruins everything, because it's like the power struggles that go against the established order. And when you go against the order of creation, you're going to have all of these second and third order effects that we are dealing with the consequences of now.
Yeah, it's parasitic, honestly. It's like when somebody is going to infuse like feminism, and I'm not saying single moms don't even show your face in a church. Like,
Yeah, that's not the point.
by its own nature, like it's going to be like this sucking pit of need.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the one crisis to the next.
Well, yeah, because they're living so
Because-
close to survival.
They're always turned on self rather than for the benefit of outside of yourself.
Sure. I got plenty of thoughts that we can go ahead and go on another episode about what I think about this whole thing and how back in the day we had natural social programs that handle a lot of those things in the Old Testament that handled this problem in a pretty good way. But let's go ahead and move on to the next law. This one's going to sound real backwards, so we're going to go ahead and put it out there now. It's pose as a friend, work as a spy is the name of the law.
Let that sit a minute.
Let it sit a little bit. So the idea is that we're going to go ahead and get rid of some of this villain framing around that idea. And the idea is you want to gain information from the world around you. And by having a wealth of information, you can go ahead and operate at your best for a given context that's provided to you. And if you're so busy speaking twice as much as you listen, you often put your foot in your mouth, especially as a guy, because we're not taught these things. We're either taught, hey, let's just go ahead and take initiative and do whatever and be the elephant in the china shop, right? And sometimes that doesn't work out so well.
A lot of the times it doesn't work out so well.
On the flip side of that, other people take the position that they shouldn't speak up at all. And that's how we end up with moral hazard a lot of times, is because when evil is being done, good men stay silent. And so neither of those extremes are reasonable ways for us to go ahead and conduct ourselves in the world. And so this is why it's important that when we have relationships with others, it's important to understand where the balance of information is going so that we can conduct ourselves appropriately.
It goes along like pretty much hand in hand with that preliminary, I don't know, one of the verse 4, I guess. That was like, don't reveal all your supervillain evil plans for world domination.
Yeah, you keep your cards close to your vest kind of thing.
Like you talk long enough for the hero to get out of the bindings and foil your plans.
Yeah, but it's useful to go ahead and trick the other people into going ahead and showing you
Sure.
their plans, right? But the idea here is that generally the man who talks the least learns the most. So we'll go ahead and let that sit. Because a lot of guys will be eager to share the things that they know without properly assessing who else is in the room. Because a lot of times people want to think they're the smartest guy in the room, and oftentimes that is not the case. And sometimes it's a matter of having a correct assessment of the people around you that is really important to know.
Yeah. According to statistics, there's a really good chance that you're not that person.
Right, or maybe in a given subject matter, you are not that person, right? Because you can go ahead and have really specialized knowledge in this one limited area, but then this other guy that's in the room will have a broad breadth or a huge stretch and span of knowledge that is applicable in many general senses that may not match the specificity of your knowledge, but can be useful to bring in at the appropriate time. And if you are denigrating that guy over not having that specific knowledge and he didn't say anything, that's a character flaw on the person that's busy shooting his mouth off. Now, another piece of this is the idea of being careful not to confide in people unless they've earned it, right? Like, why would you go ahead and share your plans for the future willy-nilly in great specificity with somebody that you don't know has your back? Like, it is such a dangerous thing, because if you don't know that they are actually your enemy, they're going to go ahead and backstab you along the way and put all the stumbling blocks in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense to go ahead and put your pearls before swine, because they're going to go ahead and ignore the pearls and they're going to rend you. That's just what's going to happen. But a lot of times people do not correctly assess who the swine are and what the pearls are in that process. And so when they're busy shooting their mouth off because they think they're the smartest guy in the room, and then somebody else goes ahead and taps them right in the nerds, then, you know, it hurts a lot more than it would have otherwise if you would have been covering your nerds.
It's funny.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times people also go ahead and take a look at this and they'll mistakenly assume that the opposite is true too. That, hey, just because you're not the guy that's shooting your mouth off doesn't mean you're the guy that should always be silent. Because there may be a time that it is appropriate for you to go ahead and contribute to the process. And a lot of that time is just reading the room and seeing, hey, in my position, am I supposed to be the guy that's just quiet and learning? Or am I the guy that's supposed to be contributing something of value to this meeting that we're having?
Regardless, you do need to, when you're in a room with other people, you do need to take more than a second and just kind of read the room. And the better you can get at that process, the better it'll be for you.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when we were talking about this, like, I think that this concept is a really well-known thing in the aristocracy and the upper class, whereas it is something that is nearly invisible to the lower middle classes until you get to be in a position in your like job or something where this information is relevant. Then it becomes something that you were taught along the way. Like, I think it was really interesting how this was a thing in the military. When you go to military education like ALS or Airman Leadership School or Non-Commissioned Officer Academy, they bring these concepts up as something because you're going from one tier of the totem pole to the next tier. And there's certain rules that you are brought into so that you can go ahead and operate properly in your new role. We as a society don't go ahead and teach this as a baseline set of expectations, because the way that you behave in society is often a product of how you were instructed by your upbringing. And if you're raised middle class, you're going to go ahead and end up with behaving like somebody from the middle class. If you are raised in the upper class, you're going to act like somebody that's raised in the upper class. And that's just what it is. Right, wrong, or indifferent, but it's important to know the context that you're in to know what set of rules applies at the time, so that no matter where you're at, you don't get just lambasted for failing to see the social rules that are at play in that given context.
Yeah, definitely just take a few minutes and just look at the context of the room that you're sitting in or the people that you're with. You really need to just sit a minute.
Sure.
That's even all the time, especially since I started teaching. There's these rules like, please don't comment or please don't start posting anything until, because we get licensed in March. And most programs, you're supposed to wrap by May 1st.
Okay.
So there's that time where people start pouring into these like groups, even on Facebook and stuff. And they're just like, hi, I'm new. Please tell me everything.
It's not the appropriate time. And that's definitely not the way to do it.
And that's why that rule exists. Please wait until everybody finishes, especially if you're at the end and you've got these big like capstone events where you're just stressed to all get out.
Right.
And you just need to, where everybody's just trying to put their nose to the grindstone. And you got this person going, I'm new. Please tell me all the things. I don't even have time for you. Mm-hmm. You're already kind of putting a bad taste for you in people's mouth. Ugh. So it's, and honestly, I've developed like a rhythm where as soon as I get into one of those groups, I don't go sit there and tell me everything and I'm new and please download your brain to me right now while you're busy surviving.
Sure.
It's go to the files, go to see what other people have put up, especially when it comes to these outlines that people do for week-to-week classes, stuff like that. This is literally reading the room
Sure.
before you can even like interact with other people.
Well, because you're going ahead and doing the work of taking initiative to see what resources are already out there before you're expecting somebody else to come alongside you.
Yeah.
If you haven't done any work, then it is like being the woman that is saying, oh, I am the table, right? Whereas if you bring something tangible to the table and you say, look, I've looked for these things. This is the context that I have. I'm missing this piece. Does anybody have this piece? I'm happy to go ahead and share on the back end.
Yeah, once you've already done your due diligence and you look and you find something lacking. And honestly, even if people have said, hey, I've looked and they've missed something.
Sure.
And be like, I've looked and I just can't find it. Can somebody help me out with a good keyword to look at?
Sure.
If you at least say that you've done your part, people are much more likely. I know I'm much less frustrated with people who are just like that. Where I've actually blocked people entirely out of groups where they're just asking these things, especially when you try and help them. You like go out on, okay, fine, I'll toss you a bone here. And they're like, I didn't want that. It's like,
okay, cool.
smack my hand away. Okay, I'm done.
You're
and
over
I just
here now.
like, yeah. But it's like that with interactions with people. You get to look at the context you're in before you even open your mouth for the first time.
Yeah.
Just look at people. But then when you get into interactions with people, you see the ones that are just problematic. You're like, we ain't gonna mesh. You're here.
Yeah.
But there's people where they're these quiet, like almost, especially in a professional sense, they're these quiet people who you can tell they've been at it a while. They
Right.
know what they're talking about. That's the one to sit at their feet. Like, discipleship, here we go.
Sure. But it's interesting that you mentioned like these people that will do no due diligence. I remember when I was in my youth and a little bit more impulsive and a little less couth, we'll say, somebody would go ahead and do something like that, and I would post a link to here, let me Google that for you.
Oh
and
my
then so
God.
they'd click on the link and it
Savage.
would take them to Google and it would type in the Google search term and then give them the search results.
Click search.
Yeah,
Funny.
and so it was such a jackass thing to do, but hey, I was young and stupid, and I'm like, well, let me just go ahead and be a little asshole and solve your problem at the same time. But at this point, I just don't have time for that.
Yeah,
And as
block.
funny as the idea is, I want to go ahead and maintain a good reputation with people around me in society to the extent that I can in a reasonable fashion. It doesn't make sense to go ahead and be outright incendiary if there's not a matter of truth or conviction at stake.
Yeah, it's another point of consideration, like thinking how your interactions, even if they're right, I tell the kids all the time, just because something is true does not mean it needs to be said.
Sure. Well, and it's interesting because a lot of times people fail to realize that the way that they conduct themselves is a reflection of themselves. And when a wife goes ahead and acts in a certain way out in public, it is a reflection of her husband because she bears his last name, generally speaking, in a traditional sense. And so likewise, children are a representation of their parents. And so when children are going off wild and they have not been taught how to go ahead and act properly in public, it is a poor reflection on the parents. And you know what? In a lot of ways, that makes a lot of sense because if you're a parent and you haven't taken the initiative to go ahead and say, look, here are the rules of our social standing. Hey, we live in the middle class, or hey, we live in the upper class. Here's the expectations, right? These are the things. Because you bear our family name, here are the expectations that are levied upon you. Right, wrong, or indifferent. If you want to be a part of the family for the long term and you want to be in the will, these are the things you need to be doing. And that's just what it is. And you can make the choice what you're going to do once you're at the age of accountability. But before then, you're under my roof. That's just what's going to happen. And don't get me wrong, there are benefits to following along with the program, and there are consequences for not. But very few families actually have that conversation for wherever level they're at the time. Because a lot of times when you're in the lower class or the lower middle class, you are living at survival level and you are not thinking about the future. You are thinking about right here if you're lucky. And so you don't have this time to think about what is this family culture that I am looking to establish And so your family culture becomes a culture of default. And so whatever it is that the media that you guys are consuming becomes the culture that you're in, as opposed to you making intentional influence on the culture that you want to have for the family. And that's just what it is. And that's why we have so many problems that we have in our society. But one piece of folk wisdom that I think goes in line with this idea of pose as a friend, work as a spy, is the idea that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And the way that we conduct ourselves, it's probably a good idea to stand in line with those proportions. If you go ahead and operate from that kind of proportion, rarely is that going to steer you away from the good, the true, and the beautiful. So let's talk about this from the context of like friendships. So just because you've got a group of guys doesn't mean that gives you license to just dump all of your emotional crap on them. Like, they aren't your therapists, but there is a time and a place for sharing struggles that are going on in your life. It's just a matter of making sure that you're not the angry storm cloud that's always raining on everybody's parade, because very quickly you will find your way out of the circle of trust if you are not regulating the temperature that you're bringing to the interactions. How do you see that working out in women world?
Well, honestly, there's a reason why the whole like tea party before it was a sewing circle, where you just gab, and a lot of it is and complaining about like this, that, and the other in your family. How much, especially when people get really comfortable, like you really have to watch the ratios of again, you're talking about regulating the temperature. Honestly, it's like that, where if you are sharing way more negative connotation pieces of information, especially about your life, about your marriage, and about your kids, it's going to say way more about you than the actual things that you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. And you send a signal to the other women in the group that you are not a safe person to talk to about things of substance, because anything that you say to them is likely to go ahead and get spread somewhere else because of how freely and openly they're talking about these kinds of things.
And honestly, if I sit here and reflect interactions I've had with people, especially people I've known barely a hot minute, and then they start dumping all this negativity on me, I'm out. I can't. I have way less bandwidth than I did, especially when I was younger. But I just don't have time for all that.
Sure.
Now, there's people that are in my life that I value a great deal. And there are times when they share struggles that they're going through. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. But when it's like the vast majority of the content that we share in our interactions, no thanks. I'm not about that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that kind of reminds me of going back to the process of talking through the rules of where you're at. If you are violating the rules in girl world, you guys all kind of know whether you should go ahead and dial in or whether you should push somebody out because they're violating the rules of your group.
The herd will just kind of move over and you're out of there on your own.
And you're like, oh, how did I get to be alone right here? And it's not something that is like screamed from the hilltops. It is something that is subtly done over a period of time to shun you from the group.
Let's be honest, the reason why somebody has just found themselves on the outs is not always this.
Often this.
But it could be, and either that or it could be something like somebody else has kind of like when you let a wolf in among the sheep, where they just pretty much poison the well.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Another possibility is that everybody else in the group are wolves in sheep's clothing, and you don't realize it until after the fact, and you're like, oh, I misjudged the characters in this group to begin with. I am glad that I'm shunned from this because this isn't where I belong anyway.
Yeah. There's times where it's just, you know that you are operating at a completely different level and at a higher level than the rest of the people. They just kind of get tired of it. They're stagnant and you're kind of like
ascending.
a rocket ship.
Right. And some of that comes from envy and things like that.
Yeah.
But some of that could also be taken as the responsibility of the person that is ascending to see the room for what it is and to either behave accordingly or find a different room.
Yeah, it's just sometimes it's like no longer that season.
Sure. And that's okay. That's the beautiful thing about like freedom of association is we can go ahead and decide that we've outgrown certain friends and we can talk to them about it or not. It just depends on what your perspective is on it.
Yeah. But definitely just like the one before it, you're not going to beg somebody
To be your
love
friends.
you,
Right.
to care about you. Please don't. Like,
Well, it puts you in such a vulnerable state.
yeah.
Because if you are so desperate for love, then at some point somebody will give you the trappings of love and you will mistake it for love. And that's how people end up in a bunch of abusive relationships.
Yep.
Is because they are so desperate, like they're in a desert panting for water and they found the oasis. But it turns out that it was a mirage the whole time and you're just drinking sand.
Ooh.
Like it's just not a good thing to be doing. So here's some applications to the idea is a lot of times you probably are better served to ask more questions that you answer. If you're spending all your time answering questions, then people get to know about you, but you don't get to know about them.
That is a great exercise, I think, to try when you're trying to put this concept into practice. When you're like, I'm going to start new habits, so I'm going to get like accountability buddy. Don't do that.
Well, you could do it.
You could, but probably not. Especially if you're just starting out to do this, set in your mind to like almost not even count, but if you want to.
If you have to. If you have a spreadsheet
If-
on it.
If that's what if you need that kind of accountability. But keep track of that and kind of self-evaluate when you get out of the room and go, yeah, I think I did okay. Or, oh, okay, try again.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And if you think that it's kind of awkward, bear in mind that a lot of times people love talking about themselves. That's like their favorite subject for
Yeah.
most people, right? So it may seem awkward to start, but try it for a little bit. And you'd be surprised the kind of stuff that just comes out of nowhere just by you expressing like a modicum of interest in somebody else.
But if you want to get mechanical about it, ask them 2 questions and maybe share something about yourself. Go that way. Like literally a 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Because if you just sit there and rapid fire questions at them, it makes you like a high inquisitor, like in an interrogation. That's just bad vibes too. So
Yeah, you go ahead and put them in the hot seat and you're like, well, first we're going to go ahead and tie you with a rope. And then we're going to put the zone of truth on you. And then you can't lie. So you're going to go ahead and tell us where the bad guy is, right? Right.
that may or may not have happened in a D&D encounter.
May or may not have happened, yeah. It's like just because they're paralyzed because of hold person doesn't mean they can't talk, right?
Oh, we pissed off the DM so bad.
Hey man, we love shenanigans. Speaking of shenanigans, we got special shenanigans for tonight, so that's
Yeah.
going to be great. Let's go ahead.
goodness.
So another thing to go ahead and talk about before we move on is that it's really important to observe people when they're under pressure, because oftentimes it is when somebody is under pressure that they reveal their character. Because a lot of times, if they are not on a firm foundation, they can easily get knocked off course, and then you can see who they really are. Because a lot of people don't have it together when stuff is going on. And I think this is one of those things that causes women to test men in a lot of ways, is they go ahead and intentionally try to knock him off his course and see if he goes ahead and turns and bends or hands her the wheel. And none of those are the right answer in that circumstance, because she's trying to go ahead and determine whether he is a worthy partner for her and whether he is someone that she is safe with.
Yep.
Both of those things apply at the same time. And so just keep that in mind, is not only should you be paying attention to other people when you're being tested, pay attention to yourself when you're being tested. Are you actually doing the things that you say that you are doing, or are you bending to the winds of change? And if you are bending for a purpose, or are you bending just because you're buckling under pressure?
Or are you doing that thing where you've been maintaining a facade or a mask, and then when ish hits the fan, you can't do that and handle situations at the same time.
Yeah.
So the mask falls. It's like,
It puts you in a situation that you just don't want to be in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because not just that, like a relationship potential candidate, it's everybody's watching. Like everybody's watching you. I think that's why they say the best way you can like test somebody that you want to be with long term is travel together.
Sure, because there's a lot of just nitnoid stuff that comes
Yeah.
up in travel that can be annoying, and how they handle annoying situations tells you a little bit about how they're going to work under pressure.
If you can't even pack the car cooperatively,
Something's up.
You might wanna evaluate that a little bit.
Well, or you just
Start
have
there.
fundamental differences in how you pack, and then you go ahead and figure out, hey, how do we find common ground, and then move from there. That would be a healthy way of handling that. But a lot of times people can't even get to that because they're like, my way of packing is the only right way because this is how I was raised and it's just what it is.
Yep.
And that's not a good way to enter into a relationship or to show yourself in a relationship because guess what? The two of you are building a family together is the idea.
The whole one flesh thing, they meant that.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong, the guy is leading, but the thing is, he's not an ogre in the process.
Exactly. Take traveling. I don't want to pick every little thing out that you want to take with us. So I have you just pull out all the clothes. But you're not going to sit there and nitpick about how I pack it all.
No, I don't care about it
It's
for
like,
the most
I
part.
don't care. But
That's a
here's
detail
the
that
things
doesn't matter to me.
So it's great. You provide me the things that you want me to put in there, and I put them in there.
That's it.
And then there's things where I've kind of picked up on your preference, like having just the shirts on the hangers, like those kinds of shirts. Cool. Any dress that I have lays on top. Cool. And then I know what you use we check like a common toiletry bag. It's just been a thing that we've kind of honed over years of traveling together.
Sure.
There's still things that like upset us or whatever, but honestly,
It's not that big a deal.
again, do you want to be right or do you want to be married?
Sure. Look, I know I'm going to be driving for 12 hours today. I'm not going to go ahead and be fighting about all these things.
Yeah, it's not.
But anyhow, let's go ahead and move on to the next emotionally charged law. This one's also going to be one of those that is going to sound real icky to start, but it's going to be really clear as we go through. The idea is to crush your enemy totally. Do not give them a chance to stab you in the back. If you have determined that you have no need of them or their services and you want them away from you and out of your life, you need to not leave loose ends to the best that you can. Now, I'm going to be really clear on what I mean. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm not advocating for cruelty. I'm not advocating for any kind of revenge fantasies that can go ahead and come about when you think about this in plain terms. But the idea is that you don't leave loose ends. Why? Because a lot of times half measures will invite some kind of retaliation. And I've got a story about this, about the first year of business for our game store here. So I had a husband and wife that were a general manager and assistant manager. And when I hired them, I did not realize that the wife was a nutcase. She went ahead and had a good mask, and she carried herself well for an extended period of time. And at some point, the mask slipped, and she was no longer under our employ. And I thought that the husband could go ahead and kind of rein things in. Turns out that was not the case. And over a period of time, the wife kept going ahead and manipulating things in the business in such a way, even though she was no longer an employee of the business, that by leaving that loose end, there were a lot of heartaches that I dealt with that I did not need to had I correctly assessed who was in the driver's seat of that relationship. I had mistakenly made the assumption that he was in the driver's seat, but it turned out that she was in the driver's seat manipulating him the whole time. And like, he was complicit in it, but that's just what it was. And it came to a point where there was like an actual legal case because after things had progressed and he needed to not be part of the business any longer, stuff happened after he was terminated, and it led to a felony charge on his end. And it was kind of a rough deal, and it sucked, but sometimes you need to go ahead and call the authorities for appropriate measures when lines are crossed. And had I known about this law in the first place, I probably would have navigated differently. I could have changed all the passwords right away like I should have. I could have fired both of them at the same time and then just taken on the general manager role for a couple of months while I could go ahead and find and hire a new one during that period of time. There was any number of other ways I could have handled it that I failed to, but have learned from since. Because here's the thing, is we don't all know what the right answer is along the way. And sometimes we need to get bumps and bruises along the way. And that was definitely one of mine. And it sucked to have gone through it, but a lot of times that's just how we learn, is by going through hardship and heartache. And that was just kind of a deal because it also caused like other conflicts in life and in family. And it drained my focus from other things that I could have been doing at the time to deal with a lot of like fires that were being set in other directions that I had not correctly assessed at the time were coming from the wife in that case. So it just is what it is. Now, a lot of times where men fail to go ahead and use this law, they end up getting things like disrespect at their feet and they let it slide for the sake of keeping peace. And you'll see this a lot of times in marriages where the wife will completely disrespect her husband. And when another guy goes and takes a look at it and goes, what the hell's going on here? And he goes ahead and takes the guy aside and says, hey, dude, are you okay? That shouldn't be going on. What's going on? And he's, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, look, man, he said this and or she said this and this about you loudly in public, in your hearing and in the hearing of other people. That's not what healthy people do. And he's, oh, that's kind of how it's been. And I'm like, wait, what? Are you paying all the bills? Yes. Do you go ahead and make all the money? Yes. Then why do you accept her treating you like this? Why is that okay? And he's, I had never considered that anything else could be the way things should be.
Yeah, they never even knew they had a choice of whether or not to put up with that.
Yeah.
They're just so ingrained in their passivity.
Sure, because they let things linger so much that it ended up being a poison in their veins rather than being an impetus to change. So this also rears its ugly head when you still have like entanglements with toxic exes. So a lot of times this goes ahead and shows up in the form of when a single mom has baby daddy still in the picture in some way, shape, or form. To a certain extent, you can't really avoid that depending on the nature of the court order. However, there's a lot of times where the reason why he's still in the picture is because he hits it every now and then, because sometimes familiarity breeds all kinds of nonsense where even though they are not together, like he left an impression on her in certain ways. So she's going to go ahead and get her itch scratched when the time comes. And if you have that kind of situation and she's trying to go ahead and hold you to one set of rules, but then she's still got a life, get away from there, man. Get out of Dodge. Run quickly. Shoot. We've seen that in so many families where there's like a single mom involvement or things like that. There's still like baby daddy drama like crazy. So don't date single moms and you won't have that problem. I'm not saying they're not an option. I'm just saying that there are other options available. Now, another piece of this is if you go ahead and let people violate your boundaries over and over again, then they just learn that the boundary doesn't exist because you're not enforcing your boundaries.
Yeah, it's not even really a boundary. It's just, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't. What?
What are you saying exactly?
Yeah.
But somebody who doesn't have that kind of like social calibration wouldn't even ask. They would just act the same way because they don't get a different result, right? So if boundaries are never enforced, then they have no reason to change their behavior, just like any other relationship.
Yeah. Well, especially we talk a lot about that double standard between if she states something, it's setting a boundary.
Okay.
But if he tries to do the same, he's a pig.
He's a misogynist.
Yeah.
All the buzzwords.
All the things.
He's a pig.
Shame,
How dare
shame,
he?
Shame.
All the shaming language comes out. Yeah, and I think that one quick phrase that kind of like really wraps this all together is the idea that unfinished business becomes recurring chaos. because when there are these loose strings and all that, they can easily catch onto something and unravel a whole barn or a whole ball of yarn. And now you got to deal with all this other nonsense that comes up. Whereas if you had just cut it off in the first place, you didn't have that loose end to go ahead and get caught up into anything.
Yeah. Just if you're in this modern dating era and that's what you want to do, cool, do you. But if you do get into a committed relationship with somebody and they were talking to a lot of dudes from before, so she's got a loaded bench in the friend zone,
Stay away from that.
like she's either going to like sever that, again, loose ends, sever that and be like focused on y'all, or you just leave it alone. Just don't even. It was funny because the whole like Charlie Kirk, when he was like interviewing his now wife, he's like, I don't want to hire you, I want to date you. And she's like, no, that's not we just barely got to sit down face to face for the first time. No, I don't want to do that. We can be friends. And he goes, I have enough friends. I love that. That was like really good. It's like, I have enough friends.
Yeah. I'm not interested in that. I am interested in dating you and pursuing you. I'm not interested in a friendship. And so that's an example of setting a boundary. And in that case, if there's any hint of attraction there, that is really hot for a woman, for the guy to be like, this is the boundary, this is what it is, and to go ahead and be so confident and self-assured.
Especially when it comes to a man, especially if you're like in your 30s, you don't really have a whole lot of time to like mess around with that stuff. If you're going somewhere, you need somebody to come alongside and this is where you're going. You have a trajectory that you're already on and you want somebody to come alongside. I think it's really awesome if you say, I want you. Are you interested? And she's like, well, wishy-washy. No.
You're in or out.
It kind of puts a woman into the frame of mind that like he doesn't really talk to women. Like you wanna or not. Like he knows what he wants.
Well, and he's not letting himself be affected by the whims of your emotions.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about that.
Especially if he has a bunch of like female friends like he's talking to. He's not only okay, supposedly he's committed to you, so he has to deal with your emotions because you guys are, you know what. But he's managing the feelings of a bunch of other chicks? No. This chaos gremlin is all you got time for.
Sure.
It's providing frame for that. That's it.
Yeah,
that's enough.
But I tell you what, a lot of women that see a guy with a bunch of female friends will find that to be attractive because they will see that they have found him to be acceptable and that they will go ahead and default to him being acceptable because they found him acceptable.
Yeah, but at the time where you were like, this is what we're doing. It's you and me, and that's what we're doing.
So you're talking about like in the negotiation or in the maintenance phase of a relationship.
Then it's I win.
Sure.
Then all other things, again, no loose ends.
Yeah. And so in a marriage or in a leadership context, sometimes it's about ending destructive patterns too, right? So there's an example of something that happened like really early on in our marriage where like we separated for a period of time and you had taken the entire paycheck because you were trying to go ahead and get some security for yourself. That day I opened up a new bank account, got my direct deposit switched over and all of that. And that was it. And since then, like we've had separate accounts. And for me to live on that, for that 2-week period of time, I had to borrow $100 from a friend of mine to live for 2 weeks. And then I paid him back $150 the next paycheck. But still, it was just one of those things where it was such a gut punch for that to have happened. Because like I was trying to go pay for lunch and then bam, declined. And I'm like, what the hell happened? And then, oh, that's what happened. Never again. And that was it. And when we went ahead and reconciled after we learned how to fight and all of this other kind of stuff and how to live with one another in such a way that we could be mutually agreeable and build a life together and realize that there are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed like that. And I set the circumstances where the boundary couldn't get crossed again. And it's just what it is. And I think that far too many guys would have taken a look at that situation and then just rolled over. And there are times to make hard choices in your marriage and in your relationship, and you should nut up or shut up is really what the deal is.
Essentially. Because, like, for a long time, it was funny because I remember specifically when one of those salespeople, like, came to the door and they're like, do you want to buy? I'm like, I have no access to the family money. They're just like, what? Does not compute.
Sure.
I'm like, have I ever not been able to go to the store? No. Have I ever had nothing in the pantry or whatever? No. Things are getting taken care of. It's just there's no way for that to happen again. We've slowly changed our like structure of how we handle things, but essentially it was like we had to rehab that. And in the rehab process, people were like, what?
Sure, because
Like,
it's a foreign concept to them.
Yeah, they couldn't contemplate it.
But the thing is, you don't need to go ahead and give them all the context. They just need to know what is, right?
Right.
And it's not their family, not their problem.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
here's the thing is like, biblically speaking, I owe you 3 things. I owe you food, shelter, and conjugal rights. That's what I owe you, right? And those are the baseline expectations for men on women, right? Obviously, there's all the other spiritual things, but like from a materialistic perspective, those are the 3 things that are, bam, in black and white requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the grocery card has never gotten declined. There's never been a, oh my God, where we're going to live.
Right. The concern for you.
No.
Like even when we were like just starting out and we were just going ahead and like making things beat, I was still making things happen so that you never had to work. You've never had to.
Nope.
So it's just one of those things that, you know, even along the process, there were times where I took on a part-time job to get ahead or things of that nature. I did what I needed to do for us to build and to be where we're at now. And it's sacrifices that were made in our youth that brought us here. So, but the bottom line is some mistakes are one-time mistakes. Some mistakes are zero tolerance mistakes. Go ahead and know what those are for you and make sure that they're articulated with your spouse before you tie the knot, because you don't want to have those problems afterwards because
Know what your clear boundaries are and do not ever cross them. Oh, well, no. No, oh, well, no.
Now, it's not to say that the context of things in the relationship won't change and then you go ahead and evolve over certain things, but certain things are just going to be non-negotiables.
And chances are, right now, sitting there, listening to this, you know what those are.
For you.
Don't compromise on those things. If it's that important, it's a value and a tenet of your existence, why would you do that?
Right. Well, because you're going to bear the consequences of it over an extended period of time.
Yeah, you're going to just be sitting there going,
For to have, please. Yeah. So I think the idea is to go ahead and identify the behaviors early on and to establish those boundaries and to go ahead and know that, hey, if something needs to be cut off, you cut it off. And that's it. Regardless of its relationships, whether it's marriage, whether it's family members, whether it is an employee-employer relationship, know what things are so that you don't go ahead and open yourself to vulnerabilities down the road.
it's like that whole thing about a dog returning to his vomit.
Oh, yeah. You definitely don't want to be doing
Don't
that.
go back to the throw-ups. Don't do it. That's nasty.
Yeah. So the last thing we're going to go ahead and address today is law number 16, which is use absence to increase respect and honor. So this is absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? This is something to be used delicately. You don't want to go ahead and just disappear for years on end and not go ahead and do something about it. That's not what we're talking about here.
This is an intentional, mindful thing. This is not just, oh, they said, I'm out.
Yeah, this isn't a pass for you to go ahead and abandon your family and then show up 3 years later with a brand new scruffy beard and be like, yes, now we go ahead and start back where we came from. That's not how this works.
Dad went to go get the milk.
He went to go get the milk and then he showed up and he's like, I have the milk.
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah, and then now there's a new dude in the picture. It's, yeah, well, you abandoned your family, so are you surprised? But
Don't get all mad when that happens.
sure, it's like you let it happen, so there it is. But the idea is that if you are too available it kills the value proposition of your presence, right? If there is no scarcity, you pay attention to things differently than you would if it was a plentiful resource, right? Even though I don't have to work anymore, like I'm not going to stay around the house all the time because I understand that this is the case. I've got plenty of things that I could be doing in life that can go ahead and advance our aims and objectives and can go ahead and be an advance to the kingdom and our family. And I'm going to go out and do that on a regular basis because I feel convicted that is my responsibility to do, regardless of whether or not I have financial aim to meet in that thing, right? And if I were staying around the house, you'd just kind of look at me funny and be like, what are you doing?
Why are you still here?
Why are you still here? Because you understand that this is like a normal practice and it would be something that is different from the normal practice.
Yeah. Knowing what I know of you as a driven, ambitious, like successful man, this is what you do. It would just be weird. Even before there was any of this.
Sure.
It was always like, I can't imagine you being like an old dude, like puttering around the house. Like you'd have to, what did I say? Oh, go be a greeter at Walmart at least. Something.
Some way of contributing to society.
To get out of the house regularly and go do a thing.
Right. Or if it's something like taking care of the grandchildren, like at least there's something there that is of value, right? It's not just sitting there and being slothful the whole time. There is some purpose behind the action that is being taken.
Go build a deck with your son-in-law or whatever.
Something productive.
Something, yeah. But it's a nice feeling that it doesn't have to be for a paycheck.
Yeah. And that's something that you earn over time once you go ahead and you build up an empire that...
Don't get me wrong. You worked really hard to get to this point.
Sure. But the thing is, it's something that people look at you and go, yeah, that must be nice, but then don't see the work that went into it in the first place. Okay.
It is nice. Thanks.
Thanks. I worked hard for it. Appreciate it. It's also interesting because sometimes the idea of scarcity also creates gravity. Like it just pulls people in, right? Like when I get home, the two littles go ahead and find me from wherever they are in the house, Daddy! And they go yell, Daddy, and they find me.
Legs.
And I'm like, why, hello, kiddos. And then the cats go ahead and show up, and they're like, hey, can I get some pettings? And I'm like, okay, cool. Let me go ahead and make the rounds around everybody and settle in and enjoy family, right? And we have cultivated a family culture that allows for that.
Yeah, you get to be home, but you're not tolerated. You're welcomed.
Which is very different. Yeah.
Yes. It's not, oh, you're here.
Which is really sad when that happens.
Not even the teenagers do that.
No, not at all.
Which I think is great. I was like, I worked very hard on that. Okay.
No, the teenagers are good. They do what they're supposed to be doing for the most part. And like they mind their P's and Q's. They know where they stand in the hierarchy, and that's just what it is.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because they actually look up from what they're doing and they're like, hey, and then they kind of, I see that subtle, do you require anything of us?
Well, it's just a matter
go
of
back to doing our stuff.
It's a matter of whether things have happened or not in my absence.
Yes, that's true.
Right? If things haven't happened in my absence, then I'm going to go ahead and put them to task, and that's my responsibility to do because other people did not take on the responsibility.
But even I love that they like our oldest son keeps an ear out. Come on, boy, we're doing a thing.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Like throw the thing away. We're going. Okay, we're doing a thing. And it's never
well, because I wouldn't accept that as a response from him.
No, wouldn't. But it's just cool that it's like that.
Sure.
And
it isn't as though it wasn't intentionally cultivated over a number of years, though, right?
Yes, exactly.
It is the result of work that was put in ahead of time.
There were many eye rolls in the process.
And that's fine. It's just like going ahead and establishing, maintaining, and enforcing boundaries over an extended period of time gets people used to the idea that 1, the boundary exists, 2, that it has value, and 3, that it will be enforced. And then eventually people will go ahead and understand that is the case, and they'll adapt. And that's just what it is.
It's like the previous law we talked about where it's like ending destructive patterns, where especially in parenting, if you sit there and go, if you don't stop, I'm gonna, and you say it like 5 times, it carries no weight.
Well, right, because
no water.
There's an implied threat there. If you don't do this, but you don't clearly state a consequence, 1, and 2, you're not following through on the consequences. That's why when people say, oh, you're just making a threat, it's no, I'm not making a threat, I'm making a promise. And I don't go ahead and make light of making promises.
I love that. It's not even just like keeping the discipline in the home. It's also them, by extension, knowing that you will keep your promises, that you are reliable.
Yeah.
And I think especially if you have little kids, do this now. Do this thing. It's like, you need to stop or I'm going to
Fill in the blank. Whatever the consequence.
whatever kind of parenting to which you subscribe. Okay, I'm not here to tell you how to do that part. But when it happens again, you have to get your butt up and go do that thing that you promised that you were going to do.
Yeah.
Not threatened, that you promised that you were going to do.
Right.
Then they know that when they make a promise. And what's great is that we have broken promises to our kids where it's,
What do you mean?
well, something comes up and we can't go to the park like I promised them that we were going to do today.
Okay.
And stuff like that. Where
So
it's,
adjusting a promise is not the same thing as breaking a promise.
well, yeah, okay.
Right? Because
that's why I said we've broken a promise, but that they knew, or like I simply forgot. And that's a thing with me. I forget a lot of things sometimes, but if they know that there is, even when things don't pan out like they expected them to do, there's not going to be a whole crash out and it's like, whatever, it's what it is. There's always some kind of negotiated
effort to go ahead and make things better.
To make it right.
Yeah, and the thing is, I would say that before the thing is supposed to happen, if you go ahead and talk to them ahead of time about the thing, and as a result, the thing doesn't happen, well, you've talked to them ahead of time, so you're not breaking your promise. You are adjusting it. You're adjusting terms and conditions, right?
But there are some times when I just, oh my gosh, I forgot. Oh dear. Does this work? Like,
Sure.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
And you're being an adult and taking accountability and saying, hey, look, this was my fault. I have done this thing. I have caused harm to you because I said this. It didn't happen. Let's go ahead and find a reasonable solution to move on from here. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do as an adult.
It shows them how to be human. Even as an adult, we're not perfect people. We are fallible.
And it models behavior.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that way when they are in a similar circumstance, they can go ahead and be like, what did mom do in this circumstance? Or what did dad do? Was that an acceptable thing that happened? If so, let me go ahead and do the thing that dad did because things worked out generally well for him, so it'll probably work out well for me.
Especially with moms and their daughters. To be able to know how to apologize and to take responsibility for what, went awry when it is yours to take.
Because accountability is not generally the superpower of women.
It's tough to eat crow.
Well, because back in the day, by admitting wrongdoing, sometimes you had the existential threat of being excised from the tribe. And if you were excised from the tribe, you were not surviving. So not taking accountability or like shifting blame and all that was a survival tactic that has survived the ages. I didn't do that. The serpent told me to do it.
Right?
Right?
But especially with mothers to their daughters, to model that behavior and to also have an established relationship with your kids, because by and large, mothers are the ones who get the most interface with children.
Sure.
If they understand how this is done and they can understand our humanity, where we mess up and we get things wrong or things don't work out, how to navigate that is setting them up for a lifetime. And I love that. I love the idea of that.
Okay. Well, let's talk about a couple things that good guys that misuse this will often cause self-sabotage in the process. So if you're always available, then people will just assume that your time has no value.
They're entitled to access to you.
Right. Second, if you are always explaining every little detail that you have going on, then you cultivate an expectation that you will always explain everything. And at that point, you don't have the freedom to just lead.
Well, it puts you in a position of weakness.
It
honestly.
does. Because then you're basically petitioning for...
These are laws of power, so...
Yeah.
Puts you in a very weak position if you're just A-B-B, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You don't need to explain it.
Or if you're always like fixing things. right? Because you've got this honey-do list that your wife goes ahead and puts out onto you.
Oh,
and
you hate that word.
Oh my gosh, I hate the idea of the honey-do list because first of all, does he agree to this thing? Or are you just unilaterally directing his effort? Are you taking his time, right? Because maybe he's got something else he needs to be doing, and maybe he needs to determine what his priorities are in the thing. And hey, if you come up with the honey-do list and he commits to doing it, then sure. That's one thing, is he's had like agency in the process. But when women have this entitled, generally speaking, this entitled like idea that they can just direct the efforts of their husband and he should just obey what she has to say, that is an inversion of what should be the case.
I don't believe I've ever said, oh, I'll make him do that.
Yeah, because I'm like, no, the hell you won't. No, the hell you won't.
There are very few things that I deliberately, it's like next to no things I deliberately will ever say, I need this by this time.
Yeah.
It's usually those things that are emergent that end up with a deadline, like a very short turnaround.
Sure.
But usually it's like,
we can talk
I bring
about
a
those things
thing to you and then kind of let it lie. And then when it comes to being like, okay, well, it's kind of now, it needs to happen pretty soon.
Sure.
Then I'll bring it up where I'm like, can we get a time frame nailed down? Like,
sure.
It's never a demand. It's a negotiation.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that reminds me of Christmas time where a demand was made of me and it did not seem appropriate at the time and it caused conflict. And I'm like, I don't accept demands from you. What are we doing here? From my sister.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And I don't accept demands from you. That's just what it is. Like, you can request and we can go ahead and talk about it because we're peers. That would be acceptable to me. We can find an acceptable solution, but I don't accept commands from you. And it's just not a thing. And she did not take kindly to that, but I don't care. It's, look, I don't obey you. Like, first of all, I'm the older brother. Second of all, like, we're peers. And third of all, okay, if we need to go ahead and change the nature of this relationship, I'm okay with that.
And I'm just sitting there. I told him what you told me. I did. It wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, so the bottom line idea is that if you are always present, it's really easy for you to become invisible because you just become a part of the background.
Yeah.
And it's just, oh, we just expect that this is going to happen because this has always been, so it always will be. Mm-hmm. And by putting yourself in that situation where your attention is not valued, you put yourself in a very disadvantageous position, generally speaking, in most kinds of relationships. Now, in the marital relationship, fires require air to breathe. And if you go ahead and smother them, that's how you put out a fire. Don't smother the passion in your relationship. You want to go ahead and stoke the flame, have some kindling, go ahead and feed it some logs so that it can go ahead and maintain itself, and make sure that you're appropriately fanning the flames. But if you go ahead and grab a blanket and you just jump on the fire, and you go, let's just wrestle it, that fire is going to go out, and no good can ever come from that because then you're going to have to put... It's a lot.
All over again.
You got to start all over. You got to go ahead and start the fire anew. It turns out that it's much easier to maintain a fire that already exists than to start a fire from scratch, especially if you just recently smothered it, because then the whole like campfire section is just less like habitable for a new fire. You got to go ahead and clean it out, and you got to do all this other stuff before you start a new fire. So generally speaking, don't smother passion in your relationship. Make sense?
Yeah, with demands and disrespect.
That too, from the other perspective, right? And then another thing to remember is that leadership requires a mission outside of the relationship. And a lot of times, women will go ahead and say that they want all this time, and then when he gives it to her, she disrespects it. Because then she realizes that she is kind of like the center of his world instead of his mission being the center of his world. Yeah. And it leads to all kinds of nonsense from there because now all of a sudden she doesn't feel safe. Because if she's the center of the universe, she's not a very stable center of the universe to begin with.
Yeah. Let's get that out of the way first. But honestly, you don't want a partner, you want a dog.
Right, in that case.
And that's why it like kind of irks me when they talk about a good man is a golden retriever.
Oh, they don't really want that,
I hate
though.
that.
They say they want a golden retriever, but they will not respect him like that.
But it's funny because a lot of the behaviors that they kind of exalt as this golden retriever energy is, I'm sitting there going,
Yeah, it's all the guys that are in the friend zone that exemplify all those qualities.
yeah.
And so you don't watch or you don't listen to what she says. You watch what and who she does. And that'll go ahead and tell you what's going on.
We've talked quite a bit about when she's put on a pedestal and all of that. It's never good.
Things go awry very quickly. Now, if we go ahead and apply this concept, the idea is that you want to go ahead and have a very fulfilling life that she joins your program. She wants to be a passenger on your ship, right? Whereas she doesn't want you revolving your life around her because she's going to get bored and then you're always going to be around. And then so there's no room for the fire to breathe, no room for passion and polarity to take their necessary part of maintaining that relationship. And now, just because you go ahead and pull back your time because you've got other things that you need to do, it doesn't mean that you're using it as some kind of way of emotionally manipulating her, right? I think it's just you have priorities and that you will make time for her, and you need to go ahead and make sure that it makes sense for everybody involved. And that's part of being a good leader is like taking into consideration the needs of everybody involved and then making an informed decision from there.
If I give you enough leave time where I'm like, hey, we want to do this thing, can you make it? Like, generally, the answer is by and large yes.
Sure, unless I've got something else that was already put in stone that I can't change. But for the most part, with enough leave time, I can go ahead and put that in my calendar and then build my schedule around it because I know that it was something that was a priority to you and it is not in direct conflict with any of my priorities. And so I'm going to go ahead and make time to work with those requests to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And now the other idea is you want to be missed because you are useful, grounded, and moving forward. Because you are somebody of value that's worth longing for your presence rather than you just being a bump on a log. Because those are two completely different things. So we talked about a lot of things today. Talked about how in the 13th law, you want to go ahead and have an exchange of value rather than it being like you're taking or you're just a giver with no expectation of reciprocity, because that goes ahead and leads to a bad foundation to relationships. We also talked about the idea of reading the room and having a good balance of the transfer of information throughout a set of interactions or in a social environment. We also talked about how when something needs to change, sometimes you just got to cut it loose. Don't leave loose ends because a lot of times those loose ends can come back and bite you in the rear. And it's not a fun thing when it happens. And finally, we talked about the value of scarcity and how sometimes being around all the time is not a great thing. And this is a challenge for people that like work from home and all of that. I would just say that if that is your circumstance, that you find reasonable ways of making that separation so that your presence is not something that is assumed to be always the case, because then that leads to things like entitlement and unfair expectations. Do you have any closing thoughts for the ladies?
I really do appreciate the whole thing about these are some of the qualities that in order to be the leader of a marriage and a household and a family, like these are the things that you need to keep in mind to kind of what we call holding frame. And the biggest one, I think, is the last one about making sure that she is folding herself into that purpose, that shared vision, because that's what's going to take you the furthest, honestly.
That's interesting because that just brings to mind this illustration for that kind of thing where sometimes the guy would be considered the jar and the woman is considered like water in the jar. Right, is he provides this set of boundaries for her to go ahead and freely flow within that jar to explore all the volume that's there. And it's his job to go ahead and stay sturdy and to maintain that boundary for her.
And That is most visibly seen in the four walls of a home. Like where she can just work her magic and do all these things, but make it so that when he comes home, he feels welcomed and he's able to feel comfortable. Like he's able to check all the stuff from fighting the world at the door. And that he knows that he's a valuable member of the family, that his efforts out there are appreciated. And then it's not, he just comes in from one battle to the next.
Yeah.
You can maintain that sort of kind of like a safe haven, make a little family bubble.
So that he can have a long rest.
I play the Song of Rest, ladies.
Yeah.
But I enjoy the fact that I can create that kind of thing. Not even just in myself and in the house, but with the kids too.
Right.
That they know that dad comes home, it's like the family's complete.
Right.
It's not.
There's no
like,
imposition.
Oh,
or
you're here.
Yeah.
Cool. Like,
Whatever.
nobody cares. That there is, even with teenagers trying to now flex their little self-actualization wings and discover who they are as people, they still need a dad.
Yep.
And they still appreciate, especially in this culture, they know
There is a difference.
there is a difference between their friends who don't have a dad in the house and also the ones who don't have a dad in the house. There's somebody who they call dad, but
Right. He doesn't handle his responsibilities.
it's a little ambiguous.
Sure.
They know that they have a dad that like demands certain standards of excellence for them, and that our family culture, it carries with it wonderful perks, but also a lot of responsibility.
Right.
And I love that they have that sense of identity already in this world that's just everything's fluid, everything's relative, everything's whatever.
Yeah. Whereas we go ahead and try to keep things structured and orderly with some room for give.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun together and we create a lot of nonsense. It's so cool. Every year when we travel, like the first night we stay in a hotel with an indoor pool. And kind of the six of us is just hilarious. I'm pretty sure the people who have stayed there and watched us just be a little family together. But it's funny. I've caught like glimpses of the looks on people's faces.
Yeah.
Like the kids are like, what is wrong with him? But like a lot of the adults are like, that's sweet.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So overall, let's go ahead and remember that these laws of power are not about domination. It's about refusing to be disposable and refusing to be manipulated, and to go ahead and take your proper place at work, at home, and in your own life. And with that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.